Join us as we show you how to build your very own floating media wall,
including a fireplace.
First thing we need to do is decide on our fireplace. So we are using a BS 2000 pano. This is from Bespoke Fireplaces, and inside it's got the actual dimensions of our fire. The reason we need that is because we need to know where it's going to finish on our wall. We're going to be building our wall or our media wall in the centre of this wall. So to get that position, we take the total width of our fireplace, or whatever one you've got, and the total width of our wall minus the fireplace, divide that number by 2, and then all we've done is we've measured in from that side and this side and marked that measurement down. So for us it was 525. We did the same on that side. Now this represents the edge of our fireplace. So now we've got the 2 lines that represent the edge of our fireplace. We need to install some timbers. We're using 3x2s and we're going to attach them to our wall. So we're going to have one here, one over here, and then in between every 400 millimeters we're going to have upright timbers like so. So we're going to get those measured and get them cut. We've cut our timbers, our 3x2. This is C24. You don't need to use C24. You can use C16. So if you are looking for the timbers, that's what it will be. It's basically this version, but untreated. When attaching our studs or our pieces of timber to our wall, there's going to be a few methods. If you've got a stud wall, which is a wall made of timber and plasterboards, you need to attach to the studs in your wall. So use a stud finder. If you've got brick, you need to be using some wall fixings. So these ones are from Fisher. If you're going to get some plugs, I highly recommend these because they're very good. And another little thing, if you are attaching to a brick wall, grab yourself some PGB power grabbing bond from C-Tech. It's going to give you an extra bit of fixing on your wall because this thing's going to be taking a lot of weight. So let's get it on. So I'm just literally applying the power grab and bond in little dollops up our piece of timber, and then we go up to our marks that we made. And the reason we do these dashes because that represents the side of the mark I want to put my timber. We push it into position, and then if you've got a brick wall, we're going into steel, I'll explain in a minute, but you just want to push this in. Just helps that power grab and bond grab. And then using a level, we're going to adjust that stud until it is perfectly plumb. Remember, keeping it on that mark that we made, which is there. So I'm going to be using some self-drilling screws. Reason being, we're actually installing this in an insulated panel store building, which is made of steel panels. So everything we're going to be doing is exactly the same except the type of wall you're attaching to. In regards to the amount of fixings, I would suggest between 4 and 5 fixings on every single stud that you install. Right, what we're going to do here, you don't need to do this at home, but we're going to slide this fire into position just to make you understand visually what we're trying to achieve with these uprights. So as you can see, we've got an upright on the very end of our fire. We've got another one on the very end of the other side of our fire, and the reason we're putting these in and not going straight up to the wall is because most fires are vented on the back, so we want this space to allow for ventilation, including the tops, which that'll be later on in the video. Our next step is to now bring this fire up off the floor because no one wants it like this. It doesn't look very good, does it? So we are going to be having a small platform that we're going to build underneath. Ours is going to be very low. Reason being, we're in a garden room, we're limited on height. So you need to decide where you want your fire to sit in respect of your wall. So we're going to get that built now. I'm going to show you how we build it. So we've cut our pieces of timber for our bottom piece of wall, the bit that it's going to be sat on. So we've used the instructions, so your fireplace will have instructions with the sizes, but this is what we're trying to create. So we've got a frame that's going to sit on top and it's flush with all of our sizes. We've got 2 of these, and then what we've got is the amount we want to raise it up off our floor. So ours is very low, remember, because of the building, but whatever height you want to set this, that's what size you'll cut these little uprights. Right, now we've got all our pieces cut. I'm going to start assembling it, so screwing it all together. Right, we're going to build another one of these. That is our 2 pieces of framework built. We have got 2 noggins in the middle of these, if just in case I didn't cover that. Now all we need to do is mark out for 400 centres. So from one side we're just going to start marking off 400, 800 and so on and so forth. I'm also going to be squaring the lines across like so. So I've got a perfectly square line. Reason I do that, it just gives us something to keep our little noggins or our upright studs nice and square. We can now install our little studs, our miniature studs, or whatever size you've decided on. So we're going to go on to our mark. So the way I'll do it, I'll just get a couple of screws, set them in where I've marked for these to go. And then I'm going to hold this onto my mark and send the screws in. So I'm going to do that on all of my marks. Right, that's it, they're all attached. So now we can just sit this one down flat on the floor and we're going to sit this one on top, like so. And then once we're on top, we can just now screw down into our little pieces of stud work that we cut. So 2 in each. That's our base piece all assembled. So we can now go up to those studs that we installed on our wall. We should be flush with either side, which we are. We're going to be fixing this base section into those studs to hold it in position. Before you do that, you're going to want to check that it's actually nice and level. So if it isn't, you could just use some packers underneath and adjust this, because obviously that is going to sit directly on this and we want it nice and level. And once you're happy it's nice and level, we're going to screw this back into those studs we installed on your wall. We're now going to lift the fireplace into position. This one's very heavy, so me and Brad are going to do it. At this point, we now want to be installing the little brackets that come with our fireplace. So the idea is that these will screw on here, and when we make the next frame, this will screw into that frame, which is going to stop this being pulled out of the wall. We've got a bracket on the back and it's missed our studs, so if you've got something similar that's happened to you, all we're going to do is cut ourselves a little noggin, which is a piece of timber like this. We're going to smack that in between the 2 uprights we've got here. And then we're just going to send this down behind our fire. And we'll get the brackets installed like so. When you're installing these, so you might get a bit confused and think, oh, it's got to go like that. But what you want to do is have it flush with the front. The whole idea being when we build our next frame, it sits on top. That's why we need to install these brackets now. Next on our list to be built is the top half. So we're going to be housing a TV in ours. And the first thing you want to do is get 2 more of these little pieces of framework, not the uprights, just these here, exactly the same size as we built in the beginning. So if you want to build 4 at the beginning, you can do. So we're going to get these put together. So we've now got 2 more of the frames built, ready to go, and we need to get the height of our studs for the top section of wall that we're going to be building. For us, it's a bit strange because we've got the tilted roof. So we're going to explain how you would be doing it in your nice flat ceiling. So if you just grab 2 pieces of the timber that you're using and sit them on your fire, you can now measure from the top of here to your ceiling. So let's pretend this is our ceiling. You take that measurement and then we're going to cut some studs. So for us, we're only going to be using 4 to begin with, and then we're going to frame in our TV, soundbar, whatever you want after that. We've got 4 lengths cut, so now we're going to install these onto the corners of our 2 little frames that we made. That's our basic frame built. So now we're just going to pick it up, sit it on top, and then we're going to start fixing this thing into place. While we was putting that frame in, we've made sure to keep our plug out of the way, and we have already plugged it in because it might be a bit of a pain after the fact. And now we can screw in our little brackets that we pre-installed. So now this is attached to the wall and it can't be pulled out. Now that our fireplace is attached to our wall, we can now attach our wall to the studs that we've previously installed. So now they're all starting to make sense why we do that. It's a much easier process. So we're just going to screw it through. While you're doing this, you just want to make sure you're checking for plumb, because your frame can be off of square at this point. The way these fires are designed, we don't want the whole weight of this wall leaning down on this fire. It may be able to take it, but I don't like the idea of that. So what we're going to be doing is installing some diagonal bracing, which will take the weight of this wall and transfer it back. So we've put a centre block on the sides. We then cut ourselves some scraps to fit the gap. And then all we have to do is just eyeball it roughly in the centre. And then we could just scribe along the sides. These are our diagonals, nice and cut and ready to go. So we just slide them in. We're then going to screw them into position. And now the weight of the front is now transferred back. So we're just trying to save the fireplace underneath. So we'll get these fixed into position. The next step we want to be making is to close this gap in for the size of our TV. So we take the width of the TV you're using, and for us personally we're going to be adding 30 millimeters to top, bottom, left and right. We then take that and we set it out central to our opening. So we've marked on the both sides, and that counts for the back as well. And then we've cut ourselves 4 pieces of timber the same size as these. Here's one I made earlier. And then these are going to be going in those little spaces like so. Right, we're installing our uprights, our studs. And what I'm doing, I'm just going to my marks on the bottom. I haven't marked the top. We're just going to use a level. Just make sure they're plumb, and then we'll fix them into position. That's the sides complete. So all we're going to do on the sides now until they're finished is to add some noggins. So we've cut some little pieces. I'm going to put one in there just so it's braced in the centre, and then we're also going to put one in the side, just an extra little bit of support for our plasterboard when we come to do it. So now that they're done, we need to start setting the height of our TV. So the bottom of your opening. Now, because of the ceiling height in here, we're having equal gaps, remember? So you can have equal gaps if you want, or you can change them. So this is what we're going to be having. So we've got some spacers, and then we've cut some timbers to the width of this, and we'll get that one set in, and I'll show you how to set the top plate for your opening. I'll now do the exact same thing on the back of our opening. So that means we've now got a shelf, and then we're going to measure out for the height that we need to put the tops in. So we've decided on the bottom, we've installed the bottom section, so that is where the TV opening will start. We can now take the total height of your television. Our one is going to be 840 millimeters. And then we're going to chuck that 30 and 30 on, so another 60, so that takes us up to 900. So we can mark out 900 on our opening from this plate below. Takes us to there, and then we just do a little line to show that that's where we want our timber. Same on this side, and as long as you've put this bottom one in level, this top line will reflect that and be nice and level. As you can see, it's starting to look a bit like a media wall now. So all we need to do is put some little noggins or blocks up the top to reflect these ones. That's just going to take any bounce out of this. We just want it nice and solid, and we can move on to the 2 little side sections. We can now start to fill in the sides of our new media wall. So the way we do that, we're just going to measure from the frame we've already built up to our wall. Ours looks a little bit different, again, outside building, but you'll be fine. Up to your wall, we cut 2 plates, top and bottom, And then to get the height of your studs that you're going to be installing, if you just chuck them on the floor and then you can measure up to your ceiling and then cut yourself some studs. Remember, no more than 400mm between each one. So we've got our pieces cut. We're just going to screw them together, same as we screwed the frame over here together. So we're just going to put 2 screws in each piece, top and bottom. Now that we've got our piece of wall, our section of wall built, we can just manoeuvre it into position. When you're screwing up these sections of wall, we want to keep a gap behind this lip on your fire. This is what creates that illusion that the wall is floating. So what we suggest, we cut a little spacer, so for this top lip here, to match, and we're just going to use that. So before we go leveling anything, this is the most important section, so we're going to slide that between the wall and the fire, so that's going to allow for plasterboard and plaster, and then we can screw that top screw up. And then we're going to do the same on the bottom. So once we've set that space on our fireplace, oh, that was a rhyme. We're now going to screw it to your ceiling, your wall, and the frame you've already built, and that is that section of wall tied in. I won't show you on this one, it's all a little bit different.
So people, the frame is built and we've got the electrics in. If you're a competent or qualified person, you can do this yourself. If not, now's the time to get the electrician in. So your frame's built, your electrics are in, it's now time to do some plasterboarding. But beforehand, we've protected the fireplace. 1, so it don't break, and also 2, because it voids your warranty with bespoke fireplaces. Right, so what I'm actually plasterboarding this wall with is a 12.5mm plasterboard, so don't get them mixed up because the 9.5 is for the ceiling. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight in with the hardest cut at the top. Mine's got an angle on the ceilings, but yours won't have, unless you've got this garden room, then it will have. To get something awkward like this on the ceiling, I'm going to get a scrap of this board. I'm going to mark, go along with this bit, and that's going to give me the shape of that on this board. And then I'm going to offer it up and cut it all down while it's fixed on. I'm going to get a straight edge, and then I'm going to mark this up because that's the sort of rake we want, and it makes it so much easier than trying to work out awkward angles. Right, all you do with plasterboard is, the easiest way, when you've done a long cut like this, is just lift it up, get your knife at the ready, and all you have to do is just give the back a karate chop and then run your blade down the back. And if you are plasterboarding for the first time, I do recommend buying one of these. Any of the tools in this video will be linked in the description below, so if you don't want to look for one, basically it gives this edge a nice smooth finish, giving it a better butter, making the plaster job way easier. Right, to fix these to the wall, you don't need a fancy bouncy one of these little collated guns, but if you have got one, it makes plasterboarding so much easier, and if you plan to do it, 100% recommend getting one. As I said, they'll be in the link description below. And if you ain't, simply just get some screws and some drywall screws. So these screws are black and they're collated and they don't go rusty. They're specially designed for plasterboard. So that might need a battery in it. Right, before we do that though, I'm going to write where the timbers are, because otherwise I won't know where the wood is once I cover it up. Our next job is to mark out where the timbers are, because we're going to put some fasteners in it before we cut the rest out. To get the beam up above that one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure up so I know that my joist or my bit of timber is 64 and I know I've got 2 inches. So if I put that there, so I've just basically measured up, that gives me a reference point. I'm going to put a level on that, and then that should give us where we can screw across. So as you can see people, I have left the full board here, and it's much easier to cut it on in one big sheet than trying to sit there working out the angles, the miters, the corners. Just screw it on and follow the timber lines. Then I'm going to simply lean up it inside, and I'm going to run a Stanley blade just under this, and I'm going to snap it out. And then that will give you a nice shadow line. So as you tip it out, then you can just run your blade along it. Now again, we can grab this tool and clean up any of the edges. Now at this stage, don't worry about getting these edges perfect, as long as they ain't coming down, because there's going to be corner beads added on, but I'm going to show you that a little bit later on in the video. Just remember people, always make sure you get your wiring through before you cover it up, otherwise your electrician's going to be fuming. Right, and then the sides, as you can see, I've left them long. We're just going to literally do the same process as we did in the middle. We're just going to use the wood. Right, so now that we've got our top section in, it's now time to install the bottom section. And how we're going to do that, we're going to take the measurement from our bottom of our fireplace to the top of this, and we're going to cut one section off, and then we're going to do exactly the same as the top with the saw. And just like the top, people, we're going to cut down either side with a saw, scrub the back with a knife. I find it easier, in my opinion. So now it's time to put the last pieces of plasterboard back on, and as you can see, our vents are completely clean because we covered them the whole time. And now we're going to put the top piece of plasterboard on, and then that will make sure that the heaters don't get broke. Right, so your plasterboarding's all done. Now it's time to install your beads, and what your beads do is give you a perfect finish when you come to plastering it. Now what I'm going to be doing is installing the corner beads first, and then I'm going to install something called a stop bead around the edge of the fireplace. That's it, to give it a crisp finish. So on these corner beads, I'm going to butt this butt up all the way to the ceiling, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this little bit of excess material here. So I'm going to make sure that this bead, when it's on, up the other way, that the two beads meet, so that makes sure that that gives that corner a perfect finish. So basically I've cut that out, so that's still there, so that will give me the nice sharp edge, and then I can drive the corner beads into each side of it. And then all I'm fixing it on with is a staple gun, and we're just going to put fixing through, and that should hold it still. So now that we've got our two side pieces on, now it's time to install the end bead across this section, and that will give it a neat finish either side. Right, so now I'm actually going to work on the bit where I'm framing around the window. All you've got to do is just make sure that you get nice tight beads cut from top to bottom, because this will reflect in the plaster. So people, we're all beaded up. Now we've got to put scrim tape in the joints, but quickly I am going to cut the actual electrical boxes that are going here, because it's getting late and I don't want to wake the neighbours up. Just remember when you're cutting this that there is wires behind it if you're cutting it, and yeah, just take your time and don't go too deep with the multi-tool. Now if you are cutting these out yourself, always check to make sure that once you have done your multi-tool and you've cut your hole out, that you ain't damaged the wires, because you can't actually see where you're plunging it. So yeah, mine are all good, so I'm going to carry on. So people, we have Dan turned up from DB Builders. If you're not following him, make sure you follow him. He's going to help us plaster the median wall. He's going to give you a few little tips why he's doing that wall, about what you guys could do to do your own.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to do the two sides for now, and then once they're gone dry, we'll crack on with the rest.
But you are doing the ceiling, Dan. So
oh yeah, sorry, I have already put the ceiling on already. So with what we got left, we're going to chuck on the reveals.
Dan, you got any beginner plastering tips?
Yeah, don't do it. Just try and be nice and clean as much as you can, he says. But yeah, just try and not to go, put it on, flatten it off, and just sort of leave it, don't play with it too much. Because the more you play with it, the worse it's going to get. So get it on, you'll feel it with the trowel, get it nice and flat, and then yeah, finish it off on the top coat. That, lovely and flat. Let that dry off now, ready for the second coat. Here we go. Right, now we've completed the rest of the room.
We mean D, because I didn't do it.
No, Phil's been great, he's been great. Doing well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump on and set the back, the two heads and the bottom, and then we get the face and the sides done as well.
As well as the little bottom bit down there.
Oh yeah, don't forget the bottom bit.
And while Dan's doing that, I'm going to hide behind the camera and do something that we can feel if I mess it up.
So first coat is on, and we've just laid that off so we are now ready to start putting the second coat on. So this means any defects in the plaster, obviously when we put this second coat on, real wet coat, this is going to top up all the little defects, and then when we come to put our final trowel on, she's going to look perfect. Now we are putting the final trowel on. As you can see, that's the second coat now. Obviously it's ready for a final polish up. So what we're going to do, put this flexi trowel down, get my finishing trowel, just give it a once over, make it like a mirror, job done. We are now at the stage of uncovering the fireplace. So what we're going to do, Phil is going to pull back all the protective that we've put on there before plastering, but we're doing this just to check the edges. If, I very much doubt it, we need to touch up down the edges.
I hope you've enjoyed that video. I just want to do a massive thank you to MGM Building Merchants for supplying all the materials, and also Phil, who else? Bespoke Fireplaces for supplying this awesome fire. And just remember guys to like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.